All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome, even though we're on Joyce's channel, to the NiFe Show, where we dissect the human psyche and society. My name is Denzel Mensah. I'm an ENFJ.
And my name is Joyce Meng, and I'm an INFJ.
And for those of you who don't know, we have a joint channel now. It's about 7 months old. It's called The NiFe Show, as in little play on words, NIFE, haha, knee slapper. But we wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you guys to it. We wanted to wait a little bit to make sure that, when y'all do subscribe to it, that y'all have like some content there, because we're going to be more consistent, especially this upcoming year and everything. And like I said, that's pretty much going to be a show where we dissect the human psyche and society. So we're going to be talking about type. We're going to be referencing type. We already have a whole bunch of videos over there where we are referencing type. It's not just about NFJs, even though we are two NFJs. But we're going to be also transcending type in a lot of ways. So we're going to use type as kind of like a foundation. But then from there, we're leaping from there to be able to extrapolate whatever things that might come from there. So like the concept of NI can now go into, okay, what are simulations? Wait a minute, Plato's allegory of the cave. How does that even work over here? The concept of FE, okay, wait a minute, let's observe what interpersonal dynamics even are. Concept of FI, all of these different things, even with brainwashing and stuff, with TI, whatever it might be like. So we're really trying to take everything from the abstract and then bring it into like a really, I guess, like material world, or like a very like, there was a word I had in my head. I can't remember it right now. But we're pretty much trying to bring it from the abstract into the manifested realistic. And we also have a intro video for the trailer that Joyce can play for y'all just before we get started. And during this Q&A, we're just going to request that you guys ask questions about anything pretty much that you want, whether it be type related or... Did you have specific topic boundaries, Joyce?
We can go anywhere, and the live chat is going to help guide us in topics. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So yeah, we can play the trailer if anything.
All right, I will get that set up right now. Let me know if you can hear the audio.
I think that there are ways in where people try to create and foster intimacy and almost force it by oversharing. The opposite is hindering intimacy by undersharing, by not showing up, by not sharing yourself at all. Today, I wanted to explore where that line could be.
That has been a struggle. This desire to have intimate bonds, yet also this protective wall that I naturally have up as an IJ. So Personality Hacker talks about the fixation of IJs is in vulnerability. And I don't realize how big of an issue this can be sometimes until people start commenting about it to me. I deeply crave a relationship where I can experience the abstract core of a person, to see the concept of who they are, yet I don't create opportunities for myself where I can have that as much as I'd want to. You're always going to feel like you're having one-sided relationships if you just cannot take in the love the other person is giving you. If you are a plant and you try to receive certain nutrients, but your roots are just not suited to absorb them, you're going to feel like your environment is deficient. But that's not because your environment has a problem. It's because the plant itself is having some sort of problem absorbing the nutrients. If you haven't had love modeled to you in your life in a healthy way, it can be hard to know how to recognize and spot it. And you learn something about yourself from letting yourself be transformed by something outside of you. And it is scary, and it is vulnerable, and it'll show you how much you still have room for openness. It's a very confusing experience, but it's good because it's like a kid who didn't know they couldn't see well until they went to get glasses, and they realize how clear their eyesight looks in the glasses, and they realize how much they've been missing out on how things look, but they just didn't know. I feel the same about openness in relationships. Sometimes you don't realize how closed off you are until you open yourself up.
Ta-da. So essentially that was, yeah.
That's a little snippet of our joint channel there. And that topic in the video was about intimacy. So we'll be tackling a lot of other themes too. And we're going to try to, over time, get more comfortable kind of showing our NiFE perspective, but especially with me because I'm really shy. So Denzel is also using the NiFe Show as a project to get me to open up because I'm extremely private, even if I don't see myself to be so. And so Katie asks, tell us about how you two met and became friends, and how did you decide to create a joint podcast? We actually met at a personality hacker event, and that essentially is called profiler training. And there, it's essentially a summer boot camp for people who love the 16 types. And you get to learn about the functions while spending it in the company of fellow nerds about personality type. And part of it is talking about type, but a part of it is also hanging out with like-minded people. And so essentially it was this 5 to 7 day retreat where you would stay up until 5 a.m. at night talking to people about everything under the sun. And so, yeah, that's how we met. But Denzel, what is your take on this?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much how we met too. Like technically, we knew of each other from Twitter. And Joyce, especially, at least according to what she says, knew about me from YouTube already. And so then when we met at Profiler Training, because we were both in the same class to get certified and all of that, then I recognized her from Twitter too. I was like, oh, okay, got you. Cool. And yeah, we actually hung out during the event a little bit, and that was fun. And after that, we kind of like stayed in touch like through Twitter here and there, and Telegram. That's where we talk the most. And to be honest, so I definitely have to give credit to my wife, Jamila, here, because she if I didn't, then she would be really upset. I think I had the idea that I wanted to, like this year especially, I'm focusing on NFJ content. So it's funny because, Joyce is doing the INFJ mentorship with my other very dear INFJ friend, Susan, who, for those of you who may know, like her and her lovely husband treated me to Disney World on my birthday week and everything. But yeah, they're doing the INFJ mentorship thing. But I had been planning for a while, and I'm still going to launch it, but probably now in the summer, to do an NFJ kind of camp. And Joyce is going to be a part of that as well. But now she definitely has a lot on her plate. So we're going to push that down. But I was already planning on making a lot of like NFJ content, plus launching from there. Like y'all can see that I was doing the slumber party thing and the sausage party thing. Like I was really zooming in on NFJ stuff, and I'm still in that. And then the peak of it was going to be this NFJ camp where I have INFJs and ENFJs come in, and like you just pay a monthly subscription, and y'all are going to be free to like be in a class with me and Joyce, and we're teaching and coaching in there, and then we're having like discussions, stuff like that. So that's still in the works, and it's on the way. Probably following the INFJ mentorship thing. But before that, I wanted to also make this NiFe Show thing. And I was like thinking to myself, like, okay, I want to make a show where I'm just talking about like INFJ, ENFJ stuff, and which INFJ should I have? I was thinking of my friend David, who some of y'all might know, who's also an INFJ, but I thought, I feel like I want a female. I want there to be like a mix of like opinion here, and I want it to be like someone I'm really like compatible with. And then I don't know if Jamila's the one who said Joyce or if I thought of Joyce, but like either way, we were both like, oh shoot, that would be great. And then we thought about the name of the show and everything, and even like the idea of like the logo, like Jamila was like, no, I'm gonna make sure that we get the logo down and everything like that. the emblem that you guys see, like, and she reached out to one of our friends who made that graphic and everything. And I was like, yo, this is fire, because, you know, and then on top of that, I was the one who thought of like the music to go with it, because it's urban, but then also like anime Asian. So, you know, but I don't know. I thought it was really dope. So I just really liked the whole idea and the vibe. And then on top of that, just to solidify everything, I was like, this would be a perfect way to get Joyce, who you guys always see on YouTube, but you guys rarely see talk on YouTube, because she's just getting everybody else, all 10 other people in her video, to talk. And she'll just continue to ask them questions. And then she'll summarize what they said. But it's like, okay, Joyce, what do you say? So yeah, I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be a fun way to get Joyce to talk more about herself and what she thinks. Because when me and her talk privately, Joyce, and you guys can see it from the NiFe Show videos, like, she is incredible with the insight. Like, Joyce is constantly blowing my mind with things that she'll like come down to. And it's like she'll be so shy to like say certain things. And I've been seeing her come out of her shell more and more with sharing things. And yeah, I really admire her, if it's not clear. So I thought that who better to have this kind of show with. And she works really hard, as you guys can already tell. So I was like, okay, yeah, I need somebody who's going to be consistent and not just fall off, because I'm not a flopper. So I was like, if I'm going to put in this work over here, then I need somebody who's going to also put in work. And she's been on top of that. She's like, hey, I can record an episode tomorrow. Dope, cool. Like, oh, hey, you know, we can edit this, we can do this. Like, you know, and we're pretty easygoing. Like, it's easy for us to like get on the same page, think of certain topics, and bring perspective. Even if we disagree on certain things, it's always well, why do you think that? And yeah.
Yeah, I also really admire you too, Denzel. I was actually, like he said, a fan of him before I met him. He used to have live streams with Heidi Preeb, the ENFP, on Spag Sigma. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was at all of those because I was pumped about type. And so that fed my nerdiness, because a lot of sources about type are very surface level, but that was very in depth, and that fed my soul on another level. And so with the podcast, it's a way to also kind of get me to stop holding myself back. Like in my TED Talks, I probably hold myself back 95%. With the NiFe Show, I probably hold myself back 85%. So I'm like making strides with like I'm still like really shy, and I don't know how to like fully like put myself out there 100%, but it's helping with that. You know, eventually I'll go down.
You're saying that you put out 85%, or you hold back 85%?
I think I'm super private. I think that
So you only share 15% on the.
No.
Is that
I
the
think
right
so.
math? 15% on the NiFe Show?
I don't know. Yeah, I can't help it.
Joyce,
I think it's because I'm shy.
You really just have that much in you, or you need to get this math correct. That's really hard. I know that you hold back, but you hold back 85% on the NiFe Show? Wow. All right.
It's true, but eventually maybe it'll get to 70 and then like to nothing, maybe. But I
realized, I mean, you know,
realized
now it's a new goal for me. We're gonna get you there by the end of 2022.
Yeah, I guess I'm shy because I think no one cares what I have to say, because my ideas are super eccentric, and they can push the envelope a little bit, and so I hold back in terms of that opinion. Why does Joyce have glasses in the picture but never on camera? Okay, look, guys, I broke my glasses, so every time I fix them, they break again, and I don't have the skills to like keep them. So I save my glasses like for traveling. So if I have to see something like beautiful in rich full HD, then that's for glass Joyce. But if it's normal everyday Joyce, I am bearing some fuzziness. So that's why, Jonathan. Now you know how blind I am.
You broke your blue block glasses too?
No, I
You just
didn't.
don't like them anymore.
I just have a general blue block filter for my computer, so I don't use them.
Oh. Gotcha. Okay, fancy.
Mhm. In general, what is your mental process before, during, and after meeting a complete stranger? How is your process similar and different? Denzel, would you like to take the reins?
Usually I like for you to, but sure, I'll do this. For me, okay, when I meet a stranger, I'm not gonna lie. I go by the first thing that I can go off of. I do believe that by the way somebody dresses, you can tell a lot about that person, but it doesn't say things definitively. So I'll admit that. So like, if I meet a stranger and they're like super done up and like wearing this fancy suit and all this other stuff and everything, then I might think to myself like, oh, this might be a very intellectual fellow, or it might be a Chad, maybe both. I don't know. And then it's like, but that's just my initial thought. And if anything, I want to try to prove it wrong, because like, again, it's just appearance. So it's like, okay, now let me talk to the person and let me see how they speak. What are they speaking about? If I bring up this topic, how are they going to respond? Stuff like that. And I'm slowly getting the stranger to unveil in a way. Mental process before, during, and after. Oh yeah. So then after I meet a complete stranger, then I pretty much assessed things. I'm not sure. Okay. I have a theory that I've kind of like held on to, that having NISE in the middle for me is like I'm able to analyze and assess situations while I'm completely engrossed in them. And so I'm reading and making all of these connections about the stranger even as I'm speaking. So then I won't necessarily need to post process. Like most of the stuff that I'll get from post processing, I already got through the interaction. And maybe that's also because of FE dominant. And so it's like just much more smoother in that way. So I think that after meeting that stranger, there might be a few more insights that I might have, like, oh, that's, yeah, oh, true. But I think that I do gather like probably 90% of everything during the engagement. And I figure out from there, like, which way to navigate. So yeah, I think that answers the question from my end.
Yeah, so my process when meeting a stranger is similar. I guess the differences are I sometimes am in my own head to the point where like I'm a little bit slower to engage with the stranger or register the stranger within my inner world or inner circle. So I am waiting for people to approach me typically. So it's like, cool stranger. I'm gonna wait for you. Oh, I just got grapes. So nice. So I typically wait for if someone wants to be friends with me, it is very important for them to make the first move, because I tend to be in la-di-da if that's not the case. So there's a level of forcefulness in if a stranger kind of wants to get into my space, because I am pretty, I think I'm open, but I take a bit to warm up to someone. So I notice a stranger, but for them to sometimes become more than a stranger, it typically requires the other person to put in a little bit of elbow grease, because I'm just shy, and I don't notice when people always want to be my friend unless like they're in my space. But I'm really friendly and nice. Yeah, just passive in that sense. Yeah. So Joyce will be in the NiFe Show, the INFJ mentorship program, weekly videos on this channel, and her job this year. Oh, my job is this. So technically it's melded into that. Okay, Jonathan, I get it.
Guys, just so y'all know, like, I think that Joyce works harder than I do, even as an introvert. My personal opinion is that Joyce is an INFJ sexual 9 and social second, but I feel like that's where her social comes out to. Like, it's just like she does a lot. She's really Joyce, like we'll finish a profiling session by like 11:30 p.m. and I'm like ready to go lay in bed, and she's like, "Hey Denzel, want to want to chat for some more?" And I'm like, "Whoa, you're not exhausted from this 2-hour profiling session that we just did?" But yeah, Joyce, and she'll work from like morning to night. So Joyce,
It all
all power to you.
it all comes in from an impending fear of my own mortality and existential dread. So look at it this way: the average lifespan is 72. So basically, when you're 36, you're already halfway through your life, and so we're all almost dead. So I mean, that impending sense of mortality is really good fuel for not wanting to live a life of meaninglessness, but also productivity itself can be meaningless. So basically,
Right.
it's just almost feeling like I've let so many opportunities in my life slide that I no longer want to be a victim to myself. And so that is good fuel for trying. And I don't think I work that hard because I literally just talk to people all day. So it's just an exchange about my favorite interest. So it's almost like if you were to hang out with your friends talking about your favorite interest and hobby as your job. So that's basically, it doesn't feel like work. The effortlessness makes it a little easier. And so Carbon Tracy asks, as an FI user, I thought the NiFe Show was a surprisingly edgy title in contrast to the NFJ Uranus. What is your relationship with being edgy? Also, what is your relationship with wordplay? Denzel, do you want to start off?
No, this time you got it first.
Hey! Okay, Denzel has like this secret sadistic side where he knows that I always push things off onto him. So he's just like, you know what? You take the reins, Joyce. You do this first.
Y'all
Well,
can see it in our profiling sessions too. It's like, hey, Denzel, do you want to reveal what the type is? And then after I reveal, it's like, okay, so how do you feel about what Denzel said?
all right. So edginess. The thing is, we wanted to make the name relevant to the types. So NiFe Show was the only like acronym that, or I don't know what you call it, the combination of the functions that created a catchy title. And so we've been associated with knives by accident. And so edginess is good though, because it can show that TI perspective that is possibly a little bit offensive or a little different than the norm or a little bit edgy in the sense that it is an opinion that is made from the self without really looking at the thoughts of others. So what introverted thinking is it's what do I think apart from what other people think. And so the show is edgy in that way because you'll hear some of our nuanced perspectives on things that can have that zing. What is your relationship with wordplay? I know a lot of NFPs who love wordplay. And there was this point in time where I really wanted to befriend them. So I would search up how to make puns so I could like be on their like territory. And so wordplay is okay from that standpoint of trying to impress NPs and yeah. But how about your thoughts, Denzel?
Yeah, so I am a humongous fan of wordplay. Like, I'm a spoken word artist, and so throughout the day, like I'm usually like thinking of words that rhyme, and I'm constantly listening to rap music, and so I really deeply appreciate like the way that certain rappers will put words together, and I love vocabulary, I love dexterity of language and articulation. And so yeah, I'm a big fan of wordplay, and it was very intentional for me to be like, oh, NiFe Show, because that's why, even with our intro, like welcome to the NiFe Show, where we dissect the human psyche and society. So it's like, yeah, NIFE, that's knife. And then on top of that, it's like I usually see FE as social anesthesia, and then TI as like a scalpel to be able to use to bring truth. And so I saw the NiFe Show as something that could be that, like, hey, we are kind, we're nice, NISE, but at the same time, we have like the TI there to like pierce through and like really bring truth to certain things that'll illuminate in situations. And so yeah, like I said, I was very intentional with that. And even with the intro, if you listen to it, like you hear, like I intentionally put like a knife sound, like a sword sound over there, because it's like, yeah, this is supposed to be something sharp, which we said at the end of the episode too, like until next time, stay sharp, like sharpen the mind. So I'm really always like, when it comes to wordplay and stuff like that, I'm very, very particular with it. And I think that I'm also somebody who likes to use specific words. And so even if I can find like a close word, that's why like when I'm talking a lot of times, you'll see me like, there's a word that's in mind, but if I can't reach it, then I'm like, I guess I'll use this word instead. But like, I really like to use specific words with what I'm saying. I feel like it's akin to how an FI user is like really trying to get down to like a specific emotion. TIs focus on articulation. So yeah, awareness, visualization. Oh, and with being edgy, I'm not gonna lie. I think it, well, depending on who you ask, which is the interesting thing. I think I personally do. I see an inner STP in me a lot, and old coworkers that I've worked with, they definitely see it. In fact, like when I used to work at Buffalo Wild Wings, like a lot of them compared me to Luca from the show Grownish, and I hadn't watched the show at the time, and so but they kept on comparing me to Luca. And then when I went to go watch the show, then I was like, he was this ISTP dude, and I was like, y'all think of me as that? Like I don't know, like that was like really interesting to me. But I could also see it like in different contexts. Like I can definitely bring out more, especially if I'm really comfortable. I think that the more comfortable I am with you, then the more edgy you'll see me be, because now I'm no longer fearing hurting someone's feelings, or saying something crass, and then people be like, oh my gosh, like can't believe you just said that, you know what I mean? And so I do view myself edgy in that sense, but not edgy in the sense that I'm about to be tatted all over my body, and I guess like your stereotypical ESTP type of person. But I have a little bit of sharpness, I guess. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I feel comfortable around you when I'm giving myself permission to be edgy around you, because there's a lot of desire for me to be appropriate or manage my image around people or try to make you feel comfortable or smooth things over. So if I let that more unfiltered, unpolitically correct, edgier side of myself out, it means that I trust you to handle that side of me. So what differences have you noticed because of the flip in your top two functions? Denzel is a little bit more quicker to action. So for instance, the INFJ and ENFJ mentorship thing he has coming up, he's like, Joyce and Denzel will be there. And I'm like, wait, okay, yeah, I'm down for anything. But I'm like, what's happening? So he just.
But clearly y'all beat me though. You and Susan, y'all hurried up and y'all got that. I support it for sure. I'm just saying. I was like, y'all got there before I did.
And what other things do you notice in your top two functions? Denzel, when he's going through something, he will ask a lot of people, what do you think of this scenario? What do you think of this scenario? It's an ENFJ thing. Every single ENFJ, when they're going through this interpersonal thing, dynamic thing, they'll send to multiple people, what do you think about this scenario? I would like to absorb your NI perspective, but through the FE lens. And so he asks around way more than I do. I do that too, but not to the extent that an ENFJ does it. I think it's because the TI in the last slot likes to like it doesn't fully trust its own TI, so it wants to kind of outsource it too. What's your TI? What's your TI? What's your TI? And then I'm just gonna triangulate all of your TIs and see what I think. So I noticed that. What else, Denzel, would you add to this?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's harder for me, in my opinion, to come to solidified conclusions, even though I know that as an INFJ, you lead with the perceiving function and I lead with the judging function, and we're both judges. But I think because of the inferior TI, then I'm always a little bit more insecure in what I think about certain things. And so it's like, oh shoot, somebody thinks something differently. Well, I have to investigate all of their math as to why they think that. And then I have to look back at my math and see like, okay, do I have to change anything with my math? Is there something wrong with their math? Is there something that I just can't really like, I'm always just thinking about that. Like, and it's a fear of being wrong. Like I don't want to be wrong. So it's like, okay, if I'm sharing something very confidently, that means like I've really put in so much effort here. And it's not to say that Joyce doesn't do that. In fact, Joyce does that for sure. But I just think that her having tertiary TI, like she doesn't have to, or she may not feel as much of an inclination to inquire other minds about certain things because she's more confident with it. Whereas like for me, it's like, well, no, because I just feel like there's so many I's and T's that I haven't like dotted and crossed that I could probably easily skip and like, oh yeah, I probably haven't considered that yet. And so I want to make sure that, I've really done that in that sense. And then when it comes to like FE matters and things of that nature, I feel like personally, I'm more smooth when it comes to social dynamics, and like I feel very comfortable on all that. Maybe it's also because I'm social dominant in the Enneagram. I think somebody asked in the chat what my Enneagram type is. I'm an Enneagram 9, social sexual. So I believe that Joyce, like I said, is INFJ, Enneagram 9, sexual social, just my opinion. And to answer that question just in advance, I profiled her myself for almost 3 hours. And there's some really crazy depth to Joyce that almost nobody knows. And I'm not about to, unveil it all over here. But it's kind of like those things like, like I was not thinking that I was going to land on sexual 9. But once I've gotten to know her more and all of that, I was like, oh, okay. My original thought was like her being sexual repressed. And then, but yeah, after the profiling session about a month or 2 ago, and then having gotten to know her more and then connecting it with everything I've knew about her before, I was like, this makes perfect sense. And I think that's also why she and I like get along so well. But yeah, so back to this question. I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable and smooth when it comes to like interacting. And Joyce, I think that I always tell people that she has probably the most developed FE of any INFJ that I know. Like she's always like, making sure that she checks her intuition with real people, as you guys can see in the show. And I think that like every time when I'm coaching INFJs and they're like, yeah, but FE is so, I'm like, well, just so you know, if you don't develop that FE, I can't trust your intuition, and you probably shouldn't either, because the more that you develop your FE, the more that you can trust that intuition. And I think that's why Joyce has such incredible intuition, because she's like, no, I've talked to real people about my theories. And so I've gotten that FE, SE data, and then I go back and I percolate on it and things of that nature. Whereas like for me, it's kind of like the reverse. It's like I'm gathering like data like all day, like interacting with people in a way. And then I have to do the reverse, where it's like now I have to come back and I have to allow myself the silence to percolate and make all of the connections and stuff like that. So eventually we usually come to like the same conclusions, but just coming from different ends.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with the Enneagram, it's been such an interesting journey with that. Like sometimes people will kind of meet me and they'll wonder if I'm okay. This sounds weird if you don't know what the Enneagram is, but like it's like the SX repressed. Like my thought from that is, if I'm SX repressed, the Enneagram is BS. because then I'm like, it just makes no
Yeah.
sense to me. Because with my TI, I'll typically follow a thought pattern or a thought train to its end and see where it takes me. And if I'm SX blind, then it makes absolutely no sense, because that's like the instinctual variant I relate to the most. And if it's last, then nothing makes sense to me about the system, and then I just kind of want to flush it down the toilet. And so those are my thoughts around that. But another thing about the top 2 functions is I notice ENFJs, they have a lot of FE to give to a lot of people. And so they're watering more plants. Their garden is more extensive. Whereas my garden's pretty limited. So I don't typically water as many plants. And I'm slightly better at boundaries, but still have trouble with boundaries. So I'm a little quicker to notice when I'm watering plastic plants. So you're not going to grow a plant if it's plastic, if you treat it like it's an organic plant. So just as an INFJ, I'm a little quicker to notice than an ENFJ, but may still struggle with boundaries and accommodation problems. But not to the extent of an ENFJ. Because there are some ENFJs who bend over backwards and they die, literally accommodating people. They will go a mile for someone and the person goes 1 step, and then eventually like the ENFJ gets resentful. It's like, I put so much effort into this relationship and they're giving me dust back.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had to grow from that. Now I feel like I'm so incredibly intentional with where my energy goes that I'm proud of myself, to be honest, because I don't think anybody could say that I'm spreading myself too thin. Like, I'm where quality is necessary, I'm putting it there. And I'm not in this FESE. Oh, somebody needs help. Got to do this. Oh, I need to get to this like right away. But it's like, okay, I always gauge like, how much energy do I have? What's going to be the long term of this right now? Can they do this on their own? How much should I help them in this way? All of that. So I've become slower to just leaping into helping people and like communicating with certain people like all day, every day in that sense. And more about now I actually enjoy having, before I used to mainly have friends that relied on me like for help and assistance and all of that. And so it was like, okay, 70% of our relationship is me just helping you and giving you advice and all of this, and you being codependent on me. And then the last 30% is us actually being intimate and close. And I felt like that was as great as it could get. And then over time, as I met more people, then it's like, I like helping people, but I don't think I like helping people that much, which is funny coming from an FE Dom, but it's like, I think my FE is way more about intimacy and connection than helping people. And when I'm close and intimate with you, then of course I'm going to help you. But it's like, I don't want to be like Superman all day, every day kind of thing. Like naturally I do help people, but when I'm really focused on, I want that flip now. It's like, I want us to be intimate 70% of the time. And then the last 30%, it's like, okay, I'm like helping you with this and all of that. But I had friends who like only talked to me when they needed help with certain things, and I'd be in the middle of something and I'd like put aside everything to like help them. So it's like, now I've gotten way much better with boundaries in that way. And I often refer to my garden of friends, like I have a whole hierarchy of how I distribute my energy, and the people at the top get the most of me, and then the lower that it goes, like even acquaintances and friends, they love me. Like our dynamic is still great, but yeah, they're not getting as much as like the intimates and the best friends. And of course, the goddess at the top kind of thing. And I have to do that because that's the best way I can make sure that everywhere that I'm distributing my energy is, properly distributed and I'm still giving quality. But yeah.
And another thing that differentiates the top 2 functions is your NI serving your FE, or is your FE serving your NI? So I oftentimes think that I look at people as a way to feed my intuition. So it's more of how is my understanding of people serving my great ideas about reality, or how I think about things, or how I process things. So it's all about serving how I understand things and how I understand the world and reality a little bit better. Whereas for the FE dominant type, they're using their NI to feed into their relationships. So that's going to be a little bit of difference too. And so how likely are you to be a comfort? How likely are you to comfort a person who seems to be having a bad day? If likely, is it a natural reflex or a conscious choice?
Yeah, I'm very likely. Like I said, that was something that I had to grow from. Like there were people who, while I was at Disney World with Susan and Daniel and Jamila, I was really trying to like remain present and, you know, engage with them. But then I had people who were messaging me like, hey, you know, like and I want to be careful, you know, just in case if, you know, some of them are watching and stuff like that, because I don't want them to feel bad. But, you know, like, you know, someone like, oh, you know, like my sister, like this problem's happening here. Or like, you know, another situation where it's like, oh, hey, with my mother, like this is going on, this was happening with me. Like these serious and imminent issues. And usually when stuff like that would happen, even when I was watching Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man movie, like somebody hit me up with something. It's like, hey, can we talk? Like it's a really dire situation kind of thing. And stuff like that, I would like excuse myself, like, hey, you guys hop on this ride, or hey, you know, I'm gonna sit out on this movie because I gotta aid to this. But now it's like I've become more comfortable with like just being like, you know what, this could probably wait. And even if it, not to be religious, but it's almost like how, for those of y'all who are familiar with Jesus and Lazarus, the thing that comes to mind is like Lazarus died. And when Jesus arrived late to the scene, then his mother and other family members were there, and they were like, Jesus, if you were here, then he wouldn't have died, kind of thing. And that was the verse where, you know, it says Jesus wept, and stuff like that. And sometimes I would like fear that, like, dang, like, man, if I was just there, if I had just picked up the phone, if I had just not, you know, like got on this ride, or if I just, you know, I could have watched that movie another time, kind of thing. But now I'm kind of like doing the reverse. Like, no, that can wait. And I'm never going to be so cold that like I'm just never going to get back to those people. You know what I mean? And so because I know that I'm never going to go the opposite extreme, that I can trust myself in going in that direction, without knowing that I'll lose myself in that way. So that being said, yeah, I'm very likely to comfort a person who seems to be having a bad day. It's a very natural reflex. It's not even like, but it's a conscious choice to go against that. For me, it's a conscious choice to be like, okay, no, this needs to wait because I'm having a more pressing matter right now.
Yeah, for me, it's in the middle of a natural reflex and a conscious choice. It depends on if I think the person would like comfort or if they would like understanding. So I'm trying to gauge, okay, do they want to vent or do they want advice? And so I'll try to kind of approach them from that angle. I do want to comfort people. I typically sometimes try to help by giving them more understanding too. So my comfort is a little bit like more level-headed almost. So it's like, how could you understand this situation, understand yourself a little better so that this doesn't happen to you in a way that will hurt you because you understand the root of it. So it's almost like I want to help people understand that, you know, their current state right now is a symptom of something deeper. And so I just go all philosophical or existential on them. And I'm like, all right, let's figure out you and how this is shaking the core of your being. So it's more of a philosophical analysis. And then I also comfort them too, but a part of me really wants to understand the situation more too. So there's that. What is Denzel's Ennea type? And why does he think Joyce is an SXSO9? Not disagreeing, just curious.
Yeah, that was the one I already answered. But if you have more to put on that, then you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Denzel is an Enneagram social sexual 9. And actually, I'm getting certified by 2 Enneagram schools of thought right now. One is from Beatrice Chestnut, and one is from Catherine Favier of Tri-Type. And so my instructor, Catherine Favier, actually looked at you a few nights ago, Denzel.
Oh,
And yeah, she told me what she thinks
Catherine.
your tri-type is. Yeah. Yeah. So she thinks you're either a 926 or a 927 in your tri-type. And so that she's going between those two and she doesn't know for sure.
Heidi
And
said 926, so I guess I'd go with that.
yeah, cool. And typically, here's a really interesting personality quirk with me. I'm very comfortable with paradox, and where I notice other people aren't. So like with the like, I can study from a branch of the Enneagram that despises tri-type, and I can study with the creator of tri-type and feel zero cognitive dissonance. And I'm like, well, these are tools that they work in certain circumstances, and others they apply differently. And so I don't typically feel the urge to have to choose a side, and I can exist comfortably in paradox, whereas I notice other people don't tend to do that. And so some of the reasons why sexual social 9 could make sense is because I really do prioritize intimate bonds and relationships, and almost sometimes can merge with other people in the sense that I can take on interests or hobbies to kind of increase the common ground if I deem that person worthy of that bond. So I'm selective, but when I do choose people, I do compromise myself in certain ways, and I
You
do mute
absolutely
myself. Yeah, there's the trait of the 9 that's very enduring. So I do relate to that because I mute myself to make other people more comfortable, which is a bad thing. Which is why I'm very for the philosophy of not watering yourself down for people, because I'm so prone to that. And you don't want to live your whole life watering yourself down because you're going to die very soon. Your expiration date is so close, okay, guys?
Joyce loves talking about death. That should be a NiFe Show episode. We'll talk about death one day. We're talking about pain this week, so and tonight we're talking about inception seeds. So just so you guys go subscribe.
Yeah, go check out the NiFe Show in the links below. And so Jess asks, I feel like NE likes puns as a way to change the meaning of a word, and NI likes to put the conceptual meaning in a different context. Do you guys agree, disagree, have anything to add?
I feel like I've always said that NE likes puns. Again, let me say this before somebody says that. Like, there's overlap. I believe that there's overlap. I'm such a cat person, so that just made my heart very happy. But yeah, I think that there's obviously overlap, but NE to me is more puns, like Spider-Man, for example. I think that the way that he just, not to be rude, but like he incessantly just has so many quips of things, like they just know how to keep going. And then I think that NI is parables. So NI will like take something and it'll just keep on. It's almost like beating a dead horse with like just how much it's bringing in there. So kind of like all of what I said with like the NiFe Show thing. It's like, yeah, I took that thing of NIFE, and then next thing you know, I added a knife sound here, and then I said, oh, at the end, let's say stay sharp, and then over here I said, like, let's do this, like, so all of that just going on, and like still just all centered around this one theme of knife. I feel like that's what NI is really doing. It's like, this is the one theme, and we're just gonna beat it dead. Like, we're gonna dry it out. Whereas like NE will like bounce to like different things, and it's like, wow, where did we even start from?
Yeah, I would 100% agree. NE is like a popcorn maker with word connections. It can see the phonetic connection between words and connect words very fast, rapidly, a bunny pace. Whereas NI is more about how do you conceptualize reality a little different with the word choice? That like a small change in word choice dramatically changes the overall meaning of something. So how are you gonna? So it's a little slower. It's like a tortoise, but gets at something a little bit more cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking for the other questions. Just feel free to ask a cue in front of it so my eyes that do not have glasses on can see them.
Paradox. I love
Paradox.
I just want to say publicly, I love paradox so much.
I love paradox with my heart, soul. I wanna like embarrass
making her feel so uncomfortable.
Now she's never gonna comment on anything we ever do again.
Anyways,
what is your experience with role models and admiring people? Are you always looking for what you can learn from others? What are your thoughts, Denzel?
No, you first.
Gosh darn it.
I'll explain why for this one, especially afterwards.
Yeah, I can admire a little bit from everyone in a certain way. If you look close enough, like for me, I can find a little bit of admiration in every single human being. In terms of role models, I tend to enjoy people who have an idealistic take on reality. And so one of my role models is Phoenix Wright from The Ace Attorney. And he's been typed as an INFP by Mara and Ryan at Practical Typing. And I massively enjoy his NFI take, his ooey gooey feelingsiness and his ability to vouch for an ideal that's not yet in reality and almost seeming irrational for caring about the things that he cares about, but not willing to compromise what he truly believes in. And so there is a scene where this character just runs across a burning bridge to save his friend, and he falls down the burning bridge. And that scene moved me to tears because what it symbolized was this placing your ideals or placing what you care about above your own safety. And I oftentimes have a very cynical view of people. I think that they're in it to kind of for their own gain for some people. And so to have someone so openly selfless and not even caring about their own annihilation, doing things out of the purity of their heart, makes me believe in the good in humanity. And so oftentimes my role models symbolize my faith in humanity or my faith in the goodness in humanity in some way. So I enjoy that. And I also have this weird role modeling of FPs because I really enjoy they're so willing to self-express, like for some of them, in terms of just being themselves regardless of what sometimes society like will kind of force onto them with some of them. So like there's a weird role model, like I guess Halsey. She's an artist, and I think she's an SFP of some sort, probably. Yeah. And I think in terms like she role models this sort of existential angst, because in her songs there's this tinge of sadness to them, but there's also this like exploratory nature to them as well. And so what I kind of get out of that is there are people who inspire you to explore more of your life, to get out of your comfort zone, to kind of like make the most out of life in some way. So seize the day. And so they just live it unashamedly. Like, so people who are unapologetically themselves can be very inspiring because they give you permission to also be unapologetically yourself. And so I know that's a really weird way of viewing those characters, and I'm pretty sure no one else kind of conceptualizes them like that. But role models are typically people where I can learn to be better people with. And so they're oftentimes, they have an element in which I aspire to be more like. And so, yeah. What about Denzel?
Yeah, so me and Paradox actually have had this conversation, and we were like, I wonder what Joyce will say. So that's why I said you should go first, because me and Paradox have very different approaches on this. But I think that you and I are pretty much the same here. So I relate to almost everything that you said. Like I definitely have had role models, and I guess I should also like define that. I guess role models to me are people that I admire them enough to where, okay, I'll put it like this. Everything about me, well, the number one, everything about me is like, intimacy and relationships. But then secondly is making sure that I navigate life as seamlessly, fluidly, and just smoothly as possible. I just want to go through life smoothly. So if I see somebody who seems to be able to navigate life in such a way, then I want to learn from that. So that being said, especially if I see someone who's using the same tools that I have, such as like if I see like another ENFJ or INFJ, whether they be a fictional character or a real life example, then it's like, oh, wow, they're using the same exact tools that I have in this way to navigate life more properly. So I'm going to take some tips from them to learn so that I can make my life easier too, rather than going through it and kind of like learning on my own. Like I'm going to inevitably learn on my own, but if you've already been a father and you're an ENFJ dad, and you've already learned some things and you've made some mistakes, I can learn from you and the mistakes that you've made and what's helped you so that I don't have to make those same mistakes. So that's kind of like how it is for me. So I will watch people. I will read books. I will look at. I will even fictional characters. Like I said, like J. Cole. He literally has a song called "No Role Models," and the first line he says is "First things first. Rest in peace, Uncle Phil. For real, you're the only father that I ever knew. If I get my wife pregnant, I'm gonna be a better you." And I feel like that to me is like a really that kind of like exemplifies like what I'm thinking. Like, yeah, if you didn't have a father, growing up, and you're watching, Uncle Phil is from the show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and you watch how he was with his kids, and you're like, wow, that's how I should probably be as a father one day. Like, oh wow, I probably would have slapped my child after saying that, but instead he set him aside and he talked to him. I kind of want to be the type of dad that Uncle Phil is. Uncle Phil is a fictional character, but at the end of the day, he can still serve as a role model because he's giving you certain like ways on like how to navigate life and how to like, just be an overall better person. I can look at Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender, another fictional character, and I can admire the way that like I personally believe that he's an ENFJ 9. That's just my opinion. And the way that he looks at Zuko and he's able to admire Zuko in this way and see like have faith in his humanity in this way, and like kind of like what you were saying, Joyce, like like they give you hope for humanity. It's like, okay, you know what, if Iroh can look at Zuko in this way, I can continue to look at my brother and my sister in this type of fashion and extend the same type of grace and the same type of love. I can look at the way that Jesus operated in his life and extend that type of grace and that type of love, kind of thing. And so when it comes to me, like, yeah, I'm always like looking at people in that way. And it's especially more appealing to me if I already see those traits in myself, but now somebody's exemplified them on what seems to be a more matured level that now I want to continue to also emulate in a way so that I can season it. It's like if I'm a swordsman and I'm pretty good with my sword, but then I see somebody who has the same exact sword and this time they did this trick. It's like, oh, I never thought of doing it that way. I want to try that. And so now I do it that way. And it's like, if they're constantly coming up with more tricks with that same sword that I also have, then it's like, I guess that's a role model for me, because it's like, yeah, not only do I want to learn all the tricks that you know with that same sword that I have, which could be FE, could be NI, could be SE, could be TI, but also I want to emulate your ability to be able to come up with your own things. So I look up to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm reading through Strength to Love right now, by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Justin Baldoni, Man Enough. I think that they're both also ENFJ. And would I say that Justin Baldoni's a role model? I guess to an extent, yeah. I really admire the way that he's compassionate with people, and he's very introspective and all that. And I already see that within myself. And then I see how he extends that to others in a certain way that, yeah, I just want to, it makes life easier, not only even just for me, but for everyone else around me. And I want to continue to emulate that. So, yeah.
Yeah. One of the other people I look up to is Ray Dalio. He wrote the book Principles, and he actually talks about the MBTI in that book too. And he's a big fan of it. And I believe he might be an ENTP. I don't know. But what I enjoyed about the book was, oftentimes I didn't really have like anyone to look up to in my life. And so I've always been looking for a dad. That just sounds like I have daddy issues. But anyways, so Ray Dalio is like my dad because he has these solid principles on what it means to live a good life and what it means to succeed and what it means to there's so much depth in the things that he talks about. They're not just principles, but they're telling you the whys behind why you should think about this. And so the intellectual honesty from his book was very soothing, because oftentimes people will give you rules and just expect you to follow them. But when you have someone who's like, let me explain to you the why behind this, why this thought makes sense to me, it felt way more intimate, because it's like, wow, I get to actually buy into this myself. I don't have to like take someone's word for anything. And so I admired Ray Dalio's ability to analyze the world in a way that was so intellectually honest, and with such, like, he's a really good systems thinker. Like this tiny rule that applies for this thing applies for life in general. And so there's this framework of meaning in his book, and that was incredibly inspiring. Is it better to connect worlds or keep them separate? How would you decide between the two?
Is it better to, okay. If I'm interpreting your question correctly, I think it's better for me to connect worlds. Like, so, okay, I'm gonna take it this way. My internal world and my external world, I want them to align. And so whatever I desire, and I think that's what makes me the type of person that I am. Because I don't have the luxury that introverts do to just retreat and live in my internal world, then I have to create my ideal in the external. So what I'm facing in the external world, I have to be here with it. So whatever I want internally, I have to cast that vision out so that it can align with whatever I have here around me. So I don't want to keep them separate. I want whatever that I have in here to be out here.
I think it's good to connect worlds and also keep them separate. I believe that you can do both at the same time. So I think connection is important, because whenever you interact with someone, you create a third world together, because there are associations or meanings or just the depth of the relationship that only you and the other person know about. It's a secret language. Whenever you're interacting with a person, you always create a third secret language. And so I think that it's important to connect worlds in that sense, because it's almost like reality is really painful to deal with. There's a lot of, people dying. It could be someone you really care about, or travesty can happen. You can have chronic pain. Like, there are a lot of events in life that are catastrophic and hard to make sense of and painful beyond all compare. And so I find it very important to have a means of escape, or a means of relief, or a means of vacation away from the burden of being alive that everyone deals with, because there's no completely sane person on this earth, because we all hold a little bit of trauma or a little bit of pain from somewhere or someone. And so I find when you create that, third world with someone, it allows you to escape or take a vacation away from the heaviness of the world, and you can escape into the beauty of your connection with someone or the things that you've created with someone. And so it's almost like connection is very healing too. It is a point where you can feel seen, heard, valued. And so I find it's important to connect worlds because you realize how not alone you are. And if you feel alone, it's very easy to build shame. It's very easy to feel isolated or antagonistic against the world. And so I find connecting worlds reminds you of your own humanity in times where it's easy to forget it. So in ways, connecting with others can actually remind you of yourself more, because they can tell you when you're slowly sinking into some sort of thing that's not you too, as long as you're in a healthy connection with other people and not in an unhealthy, toxic connection. I think it's also important to keep the world separate as well, because it's important to develop your own ways of thinking and your own thoughts on things and your own self. And so on a certain level, it's important to kind of inhabit your own, like get comfortable with just inhabiting your own space. Because sometimes if you feel an incessant urge to keep connecting with people, it could also come from trauma. And so separation helps you understand, are you with this person because they genuinely add value to your life? Or are you with this person to escape some sort of, bad feeling inside you that you really should be addressing? So it really depends on the case, but those are my thoughts. What are your favorite symbols linked to NI? Do you want me to go first? Sure. So oftentimes you'll see NI linked with like being the guide or the oracle, or kind of being some sort of thing that helps people move along a trajectory, because they can kind of see the future projection of where reality is headed in a certain way. And so there is this like element of foresight or future thinking that comes with NI, or future pacing. Some of my favorite symbols with it is, symbols. Like ancient symbols, like Egyptian symbols,
I guess one example could be mine is like, obviously one of them is like a seed. So the seed could represent a symbol of NI in that sense, seeing like how things,
a seed is a really good way of picturing NI. There's also the symbol of like maybe a soul, but you can't really symbolize a soul because it's a very esoteric kind of concept, because there's a element of otherworldliness to intuitive functions in general, because they don't feel fully grounded in reality. And so I find there's this alienation from worldhood that NI experiences. And so maybe a symbol for NI is something, it's maybe I don't know, Denzel. I will think about this. I'm not good with being put on the spot.
It's
good question. Good. I will answer it when it comes.
Yeah,
I'm getting
I was just gonna say, for me, like my symbols would definitely be like seeds. Honestly, sex. Not to be lewd or anything like that, but sex is a very huge symbolic thing in my mind, because it's symbolic of, the beginning and something, like two things creating something, and then where does it stem from? And then it also leads to pregnancy, which goes back to seeds, and then feeding the child, and the act of pregnancy, stuff of that nature. So I think that, and I feel like both of those are also probably like very FE NI oriented. But yeah, those are the two go-tos that I have when it comes to NI themes and symbols. I guess I'd also associate a crystal ball, but I also feel like that's like a little bit cliche, because I think that it's so much more. Like, like crystal ball is just like, oh, I'm looking into this. It's kind of like, to me, I see it almost as like tertiary or inferior NI kind of thing. Like you can still see the future, but like you've lost maybe a little bit of heuristics to it. Whereas like when you're looking at like the seed or like the circle of life, like how Mufasa puts it, it's like, to me, that's like very NI. It's like you're seeing how everything just really connects, which once again, probably also is FE imbued in there. Like maybe paradox as an INTJ would say something else, but that's how I view it.
With the symbol of sex, literally anything can lead back to sex too. So sex is a great symbol for practically anything. Because everything has... sex represents the genesis and the atrophy of things. I don't know, like the birth and death of things, it can be symbolized through sex. And so that encompasses literally everything, because everything has that kind of life cycle quality to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So as a teen, did you ever get frustrated at how other people may have seemed to not be as considerate and as understanding as yourself because of your FE dominance?
100%. It just didn't make sense to me. I'm not a teenager right now. I'm 27 and I'm still frustrated at times. But I think also over time, I've, especially like as I've been growing, and then especially even more as I got to know type, it's like, oh, you know, this is actually my superpower. And other people have other superpowers. Like I know TE dominance, they get frustrated probably with me because it's like, why can't you just do the thing? Like, why do I have to, and it's like, I'm sorry, And so for me, it'd be like the same thing. Why can't you just understand interpersonal labeling? Why can't you just understand tact and tone awareness? Why can't you just understand stuff like this? And it's like, oh, it's probably just as hard for some of them in this way. So I think that, yeah, like it's gone from being frustrated to being like, oh, not in an arrogant way, but this is my gift to the world. Like I understand this. And so therefore I should do better with teaching about it and teaching other people about it, which I think is what my whole life coaching and YouTube channel is. Like I'm teaching people how to do this thing that I feel like I've always already known how to do. I feel like, once again, like the Strength to Love book by MLK Jr., it's like, that's what it is. Like, it's like, hey, it's not obvious to everyone just how much we should love, and how much strength it takes to love and to see people regardless of race, regardless of skin color, regardless of, culture, whatever it might be, class, that you're a human being, you're my brother, you're my sister, So if you're really my brother, if you're really my sister, then why would I ever treat you in a negative way? If I really cared about you the way that I might care about myself, then why would I harm you? I feel like I've learned that not everybody thinks like that. And that's okay. As in, it's not okay, but now I can just help people learn to think more like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. There have been times when I've been frustrated by the tactfulness or inconsiderateness of other people. And it's typically tied the strongest to them not caring about the relationship. Like by them saying certain things, it almost feels like they purposefully don't want the relationship to work out in some way. So I get really resentful at people sabotaging the relationship because I'm trying so hard to make it work out. And so that can also be one of the things. Have you found older ENFJs or INFJs and learned patterns that will help us understand what is waiting for us later in life? Some historic examples: Gandhi, Mandela, MLK.
I love all three of them.
There's Matthew Hussey. He's very NFJ-like. And he offers a lot of insights that, he's a love coach, but you can take his insights and apply it for life too. So you don't have to just apply it for that. He talks a lot about the golden mean, So there's that secret sauce where you can get to that like secret, like not too much, not too little zone. So it's like the Goldilocks, you know, it's not too cold of a porridge, it's not too hot of a porridge, it's the just right porridge. And so he talks a lot about kind of like finding that perfect median in which it becomes addictive. So if you add just the right amount of the secret sauce, the thing becomes addictive. And that's a principle you could apply for everything in life, because oftentimes there is that like most optimal zone that, because it's not being paid attention to, you're not reaching that perfect, the best conclusion you could be getting at a situation. It's hard to even sometimes know when something is subpar when you don't know what the ideal is anyway. So I think that his saying really helps you put into perspective, this is the ideal situation, and never forget how good you can make things. And so that striving is beautiful. Another concept that, you know, Matthew Hussey talks about is core confidence. And he's a fellow NFJ. And I think he really understands this concept of how to build a sense of confidence that doesn't erode depending on your environment. And so how to truly build on flat ground or really good ground rather than quicksand. And so I find some NFJs are really good at like seeing how people are building on quicksand and trying to find a third solution. Okay, everyone's building their relationships on quicksand, or even building their relationship with themselves on quicksand. How can I help reframe how people think or see things to change the outcomes in reality? And so that's very inspirational in that sense. But your thoughts, Denzel?
Yeah. For me, I think that, first of all, I agree with everything that Joyce just said. And I think that for NFJs, what they are most interested in is the meta perspective of interpersonal dynamics. So looking at how we relate to each other and constantly tinkering on working on how to improve that. So that's why I think, like, for example, like you get a lot of NFJs who are most focused on the philosophy of love and how we interact and how we can develop our ideas of love and the power of love and stuff of that nature. And so when I look at, Gandhi, Mandela, MLK, bell hooks, Eric Fromm, Alfred Adler, like there's just so many, to look at in that way. I think that all of them are coming from the idea of how can we make our relationships better and more enriching. And I feel like that's the key to life. Like if you can make your relationships with everyone as enriching as possible, like that's low key, like high key to me, what world peace is. Like once again, if I see you as my brother, as my sister, and I just, I'm trying to, we don't have to be the best of friends, but if I have just this common respect for you as a human being, and this love for you as a human being, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to, or let me be more pedantic here. I might hurt you, but not intentionally. And you would know that I'm not intentionally trying to hurt you. And so you'd be comfortable sharing, hey, Denzel, you've hurt me here. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry. I never intended to actually hurt you here. Could you explain how? And so that I can explain, better, like, okay, this is where, this is what I meant to say. And maybe I did mean this, but I did not mean for it to come off this way. And, we're all coming from the place of intentions. Like, okay, because I believe that you have good intentions and that I have good intentions, then I'm not going to assume the worst of your intentions. And I think that that's where, for me as an NFJ especially, like I love people who are like that, who are not quick to be defensive, like, and think like, oh, so you was trying to, I can't stand that. Like, instead it's like, okay, people who are just sincerely trying to understand, even if we disagree at the end of the day, we can come to that. I feel like that's definitely what I've seen the most when it comes to ENFJ and INFJs, whether they be fictional or whether they be in real life. Yeah.
Yeah. Any particular genres, songs, artists that really stimulate your NIFE separately, or both? Denzel,
Yeah.
do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm a big music head. So like I said earlier, I really love rap music. I love rap music like a lot. Not so much, the very degrading type of rap music. I guess I need to make that clear nowadays. But I really like, like Kendrick Lamar, just talking about like really substantial issues, and J. Cole, he's my favorite rapper. Andy Mineo, oh, y'all are sleeping on him. He is so real. And I even like Hobson. Like if you guys have not listen to Hobson Illmind 5. I believe he's an ENTP, but like, wow. Illmind 5, like look that up, and it's just like it's vulgar, but he's really like speaking truth. So I really like stuff like that. Like it's like one of the most TI things that you'll probably see there. Like he's just pretty much like calling out people in certain ways for how they approach things. I love Joyner Lucas. I believe that he's an ISTP, and he's like also the type to like call out certain things. Eminem. For Eminem, I think that I really like the way he plays with words. I also think that he's ISTP, and his the way that he's able to say things like so quickly. Yeah. So yeah, I really like hip hop music, but I also really love jazz music. I play the keyboard, so I can chill and like listen to jazz. Like if anything, I think somebody asked like, what's your constant like mood in a certain song kind of thing. I feel like if you listen to the songs Slide by Calvin Harris and / or Rock With You by Michael Jackson, like that's the mood that's in my head like at almost all times. So yeah, but I really like music that's really thought-provoking. I like when it's aggressive because it's passionate. And I like when it's really chill and relaxing. So yeah.
Yeah. I tend to listen to love songs or breakup songs that talk about that. I like the emotional, like the emotional depth of those songs. So I actually listen to a lot of FP musicians, and so I don't actually go into my NIFE when I listen to songs. But when I listen to commentary and thought-provoking things, I do actually listen with my NIFE. What is your relationship with aesthetics and how you appreciate things? Curious about SE use.
I had to learn from my wife. I'm not even gonna front. She's an ISFP. Before, and I think also coming from New York, like the Bronx, and I mainly just got clothes from my parents, but I didn't really like care for clothes. I was just more of like a tech nerdy Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z type of person, Sonic the Hedgehog, stuff like that. And then I guess as I've gotten older, one lesson I've been really like leaning into is like, I see the ESPs, sometimes also the ISPs, and how they look so good and they focus so much on how they look. And growing up, I used to kind of scoff at that because I saw most of the ones that I had engaged with that focused so much on that. They focused so much on it that when you actually talk to them, there's no substance there. So it's like, well, you look great. You've done well, like attracting me, but you're not keeping me here kind of thing. And I was almost like detesting that because I was like, I never want to be that. But over the past couple of years, and like if you go back on my channel, you can see the more of the progression there. I've started to see like, you know what, SE, I really like that. Like it's not bad to be very, I guess like it's not bad to focus more on how you look, especially because regardless of whatever, like it doesn't matter, just the way that the world is, people are going to look at you and they're going to make judgments off of how you look like. So it's good to focus on how you look, and it's okay to be more, I don't want to use the word superficial, but, you know, being more apparent, like being more intentional with your appearance, but also just make sure that you have the substance there too. And that's one of the biggest things. And then once again, I realized like, well, yeah, I feel like I'm always going to have the substance. Like that's something that I've worked way too hard on, or I've naturally accumulated over my life. And so nobody will be able to look at me and be like, oh, he doesn't have substance. So if I just look like the people who don't have substance, that's also okay. Yeah.
Very, very fascinating. I wanted to answer the last question a little bit. So I realized the reason why I like Halsey is because it actually invokes feelings of empathy from me. So if you listen to her songs, you'll realize that she has the softest feelings, or like a soft spot for her child, so her future child. Like she has one song about a miscarriage that she had and another song about the child that she's having. And there's a certain type of empathy I feel for her, because she hasn't felt that kind of deep love in a romantic relationship, and you can feel it through her songs. It's like the guys that she's with, they're just kind of for that moment, or maybe she wanted something with them, but she could never have something with them. And so I feel the empathy for, there's a lot, some of her songs communicate like an emptiness in her heart. And I feel this sick pleasure for when I empathize for people. So when someone is going through a hard circumstance and I can infer more deeply into their scenario than other people are, that kind of soft spot I develop for them makes me like them more. And so I think I listen to songs too, because on some level, there's this empathetic pull to their situation. Like, wow, they're suffering so much when they don't have to be. You know, it's like if things were different, they wouldn't be going through like this inner turmoil or this pain that they feel. But because life is imperfect and life is tragic in some ways, you have people who have good intentions suffering for no reason. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I listen to the songs that I listen to.
I feel like, don't quote me on this, anyone, but I just wanted to say that Halsey, I've always saw her as an ENFJ Enneagram 4, which
Really?
in my opinion are like really uncommon. Yeah. And then it seems like that's what a lot of people on Type Twitter also typed her as. So again, I'm not like a super huge fan. I do listen to her here and there, but I wouldn't say it enough, like to the point where, because then Jamila would probably watch me like, no, you don't. You've listened to like her albums like a couple of times, but you don't like, you know. So I'm not like a big fan that's watched her interviews a lot to really say definitively. But when I did, you know, hear of her being an ENFJ 4, then I was like, huh. And I checked her out and I was like, oh, you know what? I actually can see this. So that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, she could totally be that. I don't know much about her, but from what I
Okay.
like, that's more me inferring into her. So
Right.
yeah, I should probably do the work and actually look at her. That's possible. Totally.
Don't quote us.
Yeah, don't quote us. We're just guessing. And so relationship with aesthetics. So I learned to appreciate aesthetics from SFPs, actually. There are some really pretty ones that I was acquainted with, and they made me more self-conscious about my appearance because they were so gorgeous and sparkly. And so
Y'all are.
yeah. Mhm. Why do you think self-care is viewed as a selfish choice? Is it a selfish choice or a natural responsibility?
I think it's self-centered, but it's not selfish. I think that self-centered and selfish are two distinctions that need to be made. When you're focused on yourself, that's a good thing to have, because focusing on yourself is what's going to keep you energized. It's going to keep you alive. A lot of times, it's gonna cause self-preservation in a way. So it's good for a mother to do self-care so that she can continue to be there for her children. If anything, self-care can also be selfless, like the stereotypical, I have to make sure I put on my mask first before I help somebody else. But if you don't allow yourself to self-care and you're just constantly being there for everybody else in that way, you don't give yourself the chance to have self-care in that sense. You're not going to have energy to help other people. And then in a way that's almost selfish, paradoxically, because y'all get where I'm going with that, but
Yeah, with self-care, it's important because you are the car. And so if people drive you and you're not maintaining your car, let's say maybe you have a light flashing, like change oil now, or your engine's going to explode if you don't like do something about it. You're literally putting people in your car, and then you're driving with a faulty car. And so caring for yourself is indirectly helping your future self, which makes sure that your car won't explode while people are in it. And so you're also helping other people too by tending to your future self needs. And so it can be hard to self-care because it's focusing on you, and you're kind of conditioned to see that as selfish, but it's a necessary self-centeredness. So you need it to maintenance yourself. It's self-maintenance. And if you do not maintenance yourself, you will be this glitchy human being who will do things that will affect its users. Let's say you're a toaster, but you put toast in the toaster and it
I
just
love when you do this.
it just
watch the NiFe Show, y'all.
burns your toast every single time, or it electrocutes you. You're like, you're a toaster, you're not supposed to electrocute me, what the hell? And so that's what happens when you don't perform self-maintenance. You harm people who interact with you. And so I find self-care is a necessary thing you have to do to not be a liability or potentially hurt people through your lack of self-care, almost. Because like people sometimes, when you meet a really grouchy person who just hates the world and is super mean at your job, and you're like, this person is purposefully antagonizing me and making my job harder, and they're saying really hateful, mean things, that person probably doesn't view themselves as a bad person. They're probably a person who doesn't know how to self-care for themselves, so they're a glitchy toaster. And when you have a really messed up toaster that electrocutes people, it's not like the toaster means to be an asshole. It's just accidentally zapping people because you haven't maintained your toaster. And so people who are mean they don't mean to be mean. It's just they've forgotten about the meaning of self-care. And when you don't care about yourself, you lose the ability to be sensitive to when you're caring for others. Because when your needs are not met, you will subconsciously try to get your needs met in more aggressive ways.
I will never look at toasters the same. Glitchy human beings. I love that, Joyce, so much. And in my book, when I was reading it last night, one of the things that Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about was how Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," when he was on the cross. And he was pretty much saying, like, he said a certain line that was like, the people who put him on the cross, they were not really bad people. They were misguided people. The people who, did this, like pretty much giving the notion that, just like what Joyce is saying, it's like, people probably don't intend to actually hurt you, but they just haven't taken care of themselves in a certain way. And so then hurt people will hurt people, even if unintentionally. So, yeah. Being such a toaster right now. A glitchy toaster. you got a glitchy human being. You need to go back to the manufacturer and self-care.
To both Joyce and Denzel, how good are you at driving?
I think I'm excellent. Especially living in Atlanta now. I think I'm very, very good at driving. I think everybody else around me is horrible. So I have to drive as if everybody else around me is horrible. Because no matter how good of a driver you are, if you have an idiot on the road, you're screwed. You can twist that metal. But yeah, I think I'm really good.
I am a shitty driver. So I have a tendency to underestimate myself, so that could be an exaggeration. But I wouldn't say I was a good driver. At most, I'm a normal driver. at least, like at the worst, I'm a bad driver. So I'm around that range of normal to bad, probably. What kind of language do you use to talk to someone who can't really deal with certain paradoxes, morbid truths, circular pros and cons?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think the type of language to deal with someone who can't deal with paradoxes is to not engage, to be honest, with a lot of them. Know your battles, fight your battles. So you can lose a few battles to win the war. So if you think that your war could be won without having to engage with certain people, there are some people who you cannot change their minds. So with those people, I just kind of mute certain qualities of myself. But with certain people who just lack the understanding, I've realized that you just have to say your point more clearly. So someone not receiving your communication can come from like two places. One is that they're not open to hearing, and the other is that you're just not communicating yourself well enough. And so oftentimes I've given up on communicating with people when the problem was with my communication not being clear enough. Because oftentimes I can express myself in vagaries or in a bit of more esoteric language. And I take that as them not being able to receive what I'm saying. But I realized I just have to package it a little differently. And so for those people, you can try to maybe incorporate what would make them receive it better. With some extroverted thinking users, or just people in general, right? Or with maybe sensing preference people, maybe providing statistics or like facts can also help persuade your side. But maybe to someone, they might be persuaded more by the why. And so if you're going to explain, oh, maybe you're missing this premise, and if I just filled in this premise, you would understand where I'm coming from. But sometimes with people's opinions, they're tied to their identity in some way. So when you're attacking a certain thing that they're black and white about, it might be because, like, if they're acting like they're on edge because you're disagreeing with their opinion, it's most likely because that opinion is tied to their identity in some way. And if you challenge that point anymore, you are actually challenging their identity. Even if for you it's more of an intellectual debate, for them you're challenging the core of their existence in some way, because that node is connected to every other node within their mind. And that if they have to change that thought, they might have to change a large portion of their inner mind's wiring, and that scares them. And so sometimes people might reject paradox as a form of protecting themselves because they're not sure how to cope if their worldview is upended quickly.
Mm.
And so what are your thoughts, Denzel?
I agree 100% with everything that you said. I'm always thinking to myself, how can I better communicate? I just lean way more on that, probably even more than I should. But I'm always thinking that everything is mainly riding on like, how well do I communicate to that person? And then as long as I know that I've done my best to communicate, then if they still don't accept something, then I can sleep well. But if I'm just that type of person, that if I leave and I feel like you didn't actually do your best to communicate that thought or convey it well enough, then it's gonna eat at me, because it's like, dang, like it's not entirely your fault, but you were still at fault here. You didn't do all that you could have to be able to communicate better in that situation. And I think that the best way to do that is, for me, is I try to understand people's math. I try to understand how they came to the certain thoughts that they did. Where's the block here? Okay, let's start here. Like, do we agree on this? Okay, cool. How about this? All right, let's keep going. Oh, here's where we start to go that way. All right, let's really talk about that. Like, well, why here? And boom, boom, boom. Have you considered this? Oh, interesting. Maybe I haven't considered that yet. Okay, I get where you're going there. And if I just see now that they're not budging, and it's something maybe even that if they accept what I'm telling them, it's going to actually harm them in a way, then maybe this is where inferior TI comes in for me. It's like, this is probably a truth that they don't need to know. So it's like, I'm just going to let ignorance be bliss in this sense, and just, okay, and I'll just leave it at that. But now I know, like, okay, that's where it's coming from. They don't want to take it because I see how this information is going to affect them long term. So I should just keep this information away from them. And they're protecting themselves in a certain way because people respond to information differently. So yeah, it's all about like figuring out their math and then also how to communicate it properly to them. And that takes time. It takes patience. It takes being in control of your emotions so that you don't get triggered. When I talk to racist people, and I'm like, well, where did that come from? Like, I'm trying to like really like figure stuff out, and if they say certain slurs, I can't just get pissed off. It's like, I know that, they're coming from an ignorant place. And I'm not saying that in a way to like be offensive toward them, but it's like, they just don't know better. So yeah.
Do you think the view is better up close, further away, or somewhere in the middle? I think somewhere in the middle. So with Halsey, I keep bringing her up. With her, there's this beauty to her craft, at least in my eyes, because it's an expression of, I feel like a lot of the things in her life are kind of ugly close up. And so there's an angst to her, which I like. And so like she conveys that, things close up don't look so pretty. And even in regards to other people, and even in regards to herself too, in a certain way. And so there's this fear sometimes of opening up to people because it's the fear that if someone looks at me closer up, will they not like me? Especially as a public figure, if someone gets to know you, they have this rose-colored glass of you, but like if they talk to me one-on-one for a long enough period of time, will they eventually start to hate me? Because the only way like from up is down. So they're going to take me from that pedestal and then crash me? The bigger the giant, the harder they fall. And so oftentimes there is this fear that I'm worse close up. And so oftentimes there can be barriers there too, because it's like, if you truly knew me, would you still love me? And that can come from trauma around family, because it's like, well, if your family never loved you close up, it can be harder to believe that other people will too. Or if all of your relationships failed, then it can feel like, well, as the more people get to know me, then the more that things don't work out because there are blemishes close up. Or there's this general dysmorphia, with people. There is a concept called rejection sensitive dysmorphia. And it's this feeling that, people will reject you at some point, that there's something inherently maybe weird or deficient about you. And so I think a lot of people struggle with a form of dysmorphia that isn't body dysmorphia. So, there's a technical term for people who are really skinny but think that they're really fat because their mind can't stop seeing that. But oftentimes a lot of people have that about their self-esteem as a person. And so that can also be related to viewing something and it looks better from far away than close. And so sometimes that's why people sabotage their relationships, because they want to be the one who ends it on their own terms. So they're like, oh, if I just cause this breakup, then you won't figure out how ugly I am close up, and that you won't reject me for my core of me, that you'll just reject me for the surface of me, which is way better. And so that can happen. And so what are your thoughts, Denzel?
I see it as depends on whose eyes you're viewing it from. I think the general public, the best view is further away. The further away that you are, the better that person, the better it looks, because you don't see all of the details, so you don't see the blemishes, you don't see any of the issues there. But then I think that when it comes to I think that when it comes to the idea of being up close, like for myself, I think that being up close is actually like the best view, because that's when I'm able to see all of the beauty and all of the I like seeing the scars. I like seeing the the beauty. I like seeing like, you know, all the stuff that makes somebody a human being and kissing those scars, you know, and like showing that like, hey, I appreciate you as a person. Other people could get disgusted, not me. Like I believe I know where all of this is coming from, and that's beautiful to me in that way. And I accept you, flaws and all. And so the view for me is better up close. But I think that generally, and if we're speaking from like a more, you know, yeah, general perspective, like technically the view is better from afar because it's more polished. But yeah.
Yeah. My answer to the question is it depends on the person. Some people are really prettier on the surface, and some people are so pretty inside that I'm shocked by and in awe by their earth-shattering beauty. And so I find that with the view, depends on a lot of things. And I had something to say, but it escaped my mind. So I guess I'm going to go to the next question. Carbon Tracy says, how long do you need to spend with a person to know that you are compatible in both dating and friendship? I can see how both NFJs and NFPs might judge quickly at the early stage of an interaction. Denzel, do you want to go?
Okay. I think as soon as I enter a dynamic with someone, as soon as I'm engaged in somebody's interpersonal energy, I'm immediately gauging the long term of that dynamic. So I'm thinking, okay, what kind of seed is this? How much do I have to water this seed? How long will it take before this seed produces fruit? Will I like the fruit? Stuff like that. And how long will this seed even be able to be alive? Stuff like that. So I'm already gauging that. Whereas personally speaking, from my experience, and then from my experience, I've seen that with NFPs, they're not often thinking that far. They're kind of like in the moment with the dynamic, and they're excited about all the possible ways that the dynamic could go, but they're more tuned in the intensity of that dynamic right there. And they're more actually in like, you know, it's kind of like, okay, once I've enjoyed this to the best of my ability, then I can either maybe grow bored and leave, because it's like, turns out this was not what I wanted it to be, but I don't want to kind of say anything, so I'm just gonna, or they might be like, okay, this has been great, now I'm gonna fall back a little bit and I'm gonna go build over here instead, but we have enough of a foundation here to kind of, you know, keep things, you know, study, and I'll come back next year or maybe 2 months from now, and you know, we'll continue to, you know, whatever. Whereas like, I guess for me, it's like I'm looking for consistency in this way. So yeah, that being said, like I think that's a difference. And me and Heidi Prieb actually talk about this in the ENFP misconceptions video that we did together on my page. We talk about it way more in depth. Like Heidi unveiled that NFPs are able to have conversations with you in their head without you even being there. That blew my mind. So it's like, sure, they miss you, but they also feel like they talked to you this morning. I cannot do that. I cannot create this copy of you in my head. I guess I need the SE there. Like I want to talk to you. And then the FE there as well. Like I want to engage with you. So yeah, that's why I think that NFPs, like they can always pick up where they left off because they have this SI, FI memory of like how that dynamic was. But like with FE, SE, I'm generalizing here. So, you know, any NFJs and stuff, like, well, I'm not like that. NFPs, I'm not really like that. Just, you know, generally speaking, this is what I've seen. For the FESE, it's like, well, I need this fire to constantly be fueled. Yeah. I hope that I answered the question.
You very much did, yeah. Do you think type is something we will share more openly, like our name?
Y'all see how Joyce just like avoided the questioner?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say that.
Will it be more like the knowledge of whether you can ride a bike or not? And so with with having close friends like Denzel, they always just know what you're doing. So they're like, haha, did you just notice when Joyce was doing that? They're like, thanks. Now everyone knows my quirks. I do think type is going to get more and more popular. There are certain YouTubers like Eric Wen. I think in like 1 year he's been able to get like 40K subs, and his goal is to make typology mainstream. And he's good at making digestible content, and I believe he's going to get there. And so I think through a lot of type YouTubers who are able to understand today's short attention span mentality, they're able to perhaps grow their channel so big that type is going to grow more and more popular, is my belief. I also think that I want to help contribute to that as well. So I'm writing a book currently on my theory of type. So it's consolidating different schools of thought and what they think about type and what I agree with from their takes. And then I'm also going to be adding my take on type. And then with this book that I'm writing, I'm also planning to make it readable to the layman person. So any person who is not into type will be able to grasp it by just reading it. And so like the first part of the book will be more beginnery material where we can kind of ease in people who know nothing about type into what it is. And then the second half of the book is going to be more advanced nerdy material. So if you're a nerd, you can start like halfway through. And if you're giving this to a person who's new to type, they can get it from the beginning. I think one of the barriers to type is it's kind of elitist in some way because people have a hard time grasping what is FI, what is FE. So people get lost. But that's also the substance to type too, because type is about cognition instead of behavior, yet behavior is easier to comprehend. And it's also the only thing that exists in observable reality. So you can always infer into cognition, but you can never fully grasp it. And so like you cannot go into someone's mind and be 10,000% sure that is for sure your wiring, but you can guess at it and you can see the likelihood of that being true. So because type is such a esoteric and you can't fully observe the functions, you can just guess at them through what a person is showing, it's going to have those barriers. But I think people in the community are getting better and better at addressing and making type easier to understand with the simple new person learning about it. So what are your thoughts, Denzel?
Yeah, I think that type is definitely becoming more and more popular. Not to shamelessly self-plug here, but I did a video with Personality Hacker, so Joel and Antonia from Personality Hacker a couple of years ago. If you just search interviewing Personality Hacker or something like that, then you'll find it. And we talked about the future of typology, and that was a great conversation. And kind of like all of what Joyce said, like I feel like there are more and more people who are discovering their personality type and discovering like the depth behind it. And even Frank James, like I'm so glad that like, he's gone from the just all the me type of videos, like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he's still doing that to now he's like actually talking about the functions, which is where all the meat is when it comes to typology. So I think that now, not only is it popular in that sense, because 16 personalities made it popular, but then they sucked when it came to the cognitive functions. But now it's like, okay, we're making the cognitive functions popular too. So, and there's more people on YouTube who are like sharing about their experiences and stuff like that. We got people like Joyce out here who's gathering people to talk about their type in that way. And then those people are telling their friends. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so do you think type is something we will share more? Oops, my. And so, hello, have you guys ever been called serious or flowery when conveying ideas and thoughts and feel like you can't spontaneously speak your mind? What does this look like? What is holding you back? I think it takes a certain kind of person to kind of talk about abstract or philosophical or conceptual ideas with, because it's very easy for people to lose interest if that's not their thing. So they're like, why are you looking so into things or looking at the underlying meaning of things? So you either, one, be met with disinterest, or two, you're going to have someone who is genuinely interested and like, yeah, tell me your thoughts about life, existence, and the deeper questions. But they're not able to add their own original take or thoughts on it. So it can feel like it's a one-sided conversation. And so oftentimes there can be that barrier to expressing that I deal with. But what are your thoughts, Denzel?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I personally don't think that I come off as flowery when I'm talking about my thoughts in that way. I can be expressive and affectionate, but that's when I'm, actually like talking about, like, for example, when Paradox's question came up and I was like, I just love her, like, blah, blah, blah. That was a very different thing than when I'm in like a headspace like right now, where I'm like conveying my actual thoughts. And like, if you guys watch my videos, I literally have videos called spontaneous speaking videos, like a playlist of when I just pull up my iPad and I just talk about whatever is on my mind at that moment. And I feel like you'll probably never see me being flowery. Maybe I'm talking about stuff like love and how we should be nicer to each other, but the way that I'm conveying it to me is not the way that I would think of the words like flowery and stuff like that. So yeah, and I am able to spontaneously speak my mind. I actually enjoy that. I think that which is why I challenged myself with that spontaneous speaking video thing, because I was trying to challenge myself to not be as long-winded, to cut out some of the uhs and ums when I'm speaking, and just hop into action in a certain way, to like articulate in a certain manner. The only thing that would hold me back then was people laughing, or if I don't understand a certain concept well enough to be able to convey it. But now I'm able to even give disclaimers with that, and I feel like I trust people to not laugh in my face in that manner. So it's like, no, I don't really have anything to lose. Also, bye, Jess. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks everyone for coming to this live stream. That will be the closing off of all of the questions. I really appreciate the thought-provokingness in which you all asked these magnificent questions with. And if you enjoyed watching this, feel free to check out the NiFe Show in the links below. And thank you, Denzel, for being my FE&I friend in crime. So I enjoy our deep conversations together and getting to know you more, and your compliments, they are gold, and you're so good at maintaining all of your relationships, and I could learn something from that. So you are my role model for FE. So
And you are my role model for NI. You're always just busting through the gates with all of your insights and stuff of that nature. And I love how we're just always caving in the floor beneath us. And that's been fun with you. So wouldn't have chosen someone better to do the NiFe Show with. And Jacob entered at the last minute. Well, I think if I remember correctly, Joyce said that this is going to become a low-key regular thing here and there, maybe like once a month. I don't know. We're going to talk about it. So we'll probably take, because I saw a lot of other questions there, I'll probably take note of them, and we'll probably make them into a video on the NiFe Show. So make sure you guys subscribe, guys, because there's a lot coming up. Or we'll probably just address a lot of them in the next Q&A. Like we might just start off the Q&A with those ones, whatever Joyce wants to do. But yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have more Denzel and Joyce live Q&As too, and a big heart to the audience, and we'll see you all. Bye.